Should be good.
Yep, I'm recording.
All right, cool.
Great.
All right, here we go. All right, and 3, 2, 1. Jay, welcome back. How you doing?
Doing good. How are you, man?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for coming back. Always a great conversation. Today, I thought we'd get your thoughts on some possible future timelines and the seemingly ever-changing agendas that attempt to steer us collectively into a technocratic dystopia. But I think really the combination of the mass amount of people waking up and no longer participating in the insanity, as well as questioning everything, has possibly diverted our track to complete self-destruction. There's a lot of interesting things happening. There's still a lot of nonsense happening, but it gives me hope when I see some of the events that have unfolded recently. The COVID agenda seems to be dead in the water, although they keep trying to resuscitate it somehow. It's definitely dead. War with Russia, possible, but I don't think it's drawing the expected emotional response necessary. So we have things like that are happening. Do you think the tides have possibly turned in our direction a bit?
They have. It started, of course, with the conjunction on December 21st, 2020. That's when the tide began shifting and changing. Right after that, the whole entire COVID nightmare began dissipating. And so one of the more hopeful things I see is I've done a deep dive into the election results, and they don't make any sense. There's so many statistical anomalies that I finally gave up yesterday afternoon. I just stopped. And so what we're finding is that people are voting red in the local races, but blue in the national races, which doesn't make any sense. So in Georgia, they voted in a Republican governor, but then voted in Democrats for senator. Same thing in Nevada. They voted in a Republican governor, but then that of course, that's a statistical anomaly, is just glaring. So that tells me that they're throwing the election and they're doing it through the mail-in ballots. And I don't think it's the machines. I'd like to talk to Cliff High about that because he knows more than me, but I don't think the machines are hooked to the internet. So I don't see how that can be, but we shouldn't be doing machine voting either. Don't get me wrong. I'm not for machine voting. I'm not for early mail-ins anymore either. I think we have to switch to same-day voting, paper ballots, hand counted, no machines involved at all. People watching the people that are counting, people watching the people who are watching the people who are counting. And I think we have to go back to that. The shenanigans are way over the top. But what's good about this and why I'm optimistic is because it tells me that they have to resort to this in order to stop us from having a voice, which means that we're probably overwhelming the system, and they know it, and they're freaking out. So, my new slogan is Biden Fetterman 2024, no brainer.
Right. Man, so how do you see this go? I mean, with the local elections and your current elections being so tampered with, do you even think we ever have a chance at a fair election ever again, especially if we're looking at presidential?
No, they can't afford to give up power, because if they give up power, then the next guy's going to come in and see all the corruption. So they can't afford to do it. It's what happened in California. I was living there when they did it. They became a one-party state. And the reason they became a one-party state is because the corruption is everywhere. They're stealing money from everything. If the opposition, which isn't really an opposition, but if any kind of opposition ever actually got in power, they would go through the books, see the receipts, see what's going on, and expose them. And they can't afford to do that. That's the every single country in South America, except for it was Brazil, but now I think every single country in South America is one-party rule. And same in Mexico, it's one-party rule. So all of Latin America is one-party rule, and now it's spreading to here. So we can't afford to have one-party rule, and we're in for a really long struggle here. We're going to win. We will prevail. But this isn't going to happen in like a year or two. This is decades that we have to entrench ourselves in for the struggle. And the thing is that we live in two countries. There's two countries. There's the United States of America, which is the 50 states united by the Constitution. But then there's another America. I call it USA Incorporated. And that's Washington, D.C., not the Panama, Puerto Rico, Guam, and I think there's one other piece of land that they have. That's all their assets they have. USA Incorporated is the federal government, and only assets that it has besides the military and the banking, the Federal Reserve, and all that, which is all located in Washington, D.C., is and they own the national parks, which was a big mistake that the states made, thinking that selling off huge portions of especially the West, to the federal government was a huge mistake. So they have those assets too. So the USA Incorporated is the one that has all the debt. The whatever 30 trillion, I think it is now. Really, it's more like 150 trillion, but 30 trillion. We'll give it their own stats. So that I in Colorado, I don't own a dime on that. Colorado doesn't own a dime. Idaho doesn't own a dime. Iowa doesn't own a dime of that debt. We did not borrow that money. They borrowed that money, and then they use that money to bribe us into become part of the USA Incorporated. Here's the problem. Pretty soon now, within I think 6 to 8 weeks, all of the money that they pay on the debt is just going to interest. It's not going to be paying off the debt anymore. So it's just going, because the interest rates are so high. So, so we're reaching a point of inflection. And that point is when the debtors call in the debt. So China, there's a bunch of countries that lent us all that money. They're going to call in the debt. We're not going to be able to pay it back, so they're going to call it in. So USA Incorporated is facing a very dicey situation, which is why they threw all the elections. They cannot. What Trump was trying to do, what these guys were trying to do, is they know this. They know that there's another country called USA Incorporated. So what they wanted to do was to take over that country via election through the House of Representatives. That's who runs that country. They appropriate all the spending. It's not the president, it's the House of Representatives that runs USA Incorporated, because they control the purse strings. So they are now headed towards a massive debt, and they have no way to pay it off because they don't have any assets. It's true, they could sell Rocky Mountain National Park to the Chinese and make a lot of money, because that's where all the resources are in Colorado, or they could sell off Yosemite in California. Again, that's where all the resources are. So the federal government very carefully bought up all of the resources. Right now, the BLM, not Black Lives Matter, but Bureau of Land Management, is buying up all the waterways in Colorado. All the streams are being bought by the BLM. They're buying all the watersheds. I'm sure they're doing it in every state. Why are they doing that? So they can control us. So if we rebel, they say, okay, well, your water's cut off. Now what are you going to do? Right? And it's an insidious thing. So where is this headed? Well, USA Incorporated is forbidden by the Constitution to have anything to do with the states. States' rights trump federal rights by the Constitution. So when Colorado legalizes marijuana or magic mushrooms like they just did, the federal government can't do anything about it. They can't. They tried. They spouted when they legalized pot in 2012. They kind of went crazy and they said we're gonna. But in the end, they couldn't do it. In the end, they did not have the power to do anything to Colorado, and so they can't do anything about the magic mushrooms either. So the states have a huge amount of power that they're not exercising, and the reason they're not exercising is because governors like Polis in Colorado, they've been bribed or something by the USA Incorporated. Okay. And so the war is between the people in the states against USA Incorporated. What USA Incorporated has to do, and where they're going with all of this, is they have to get rid of the Constitution so that they can confiscate the land and then sell that land off to pay off the debt. Now, the United States is an unusual country. As anybody who's well-traveled knows, we actually own our land in this country. You don't own your land in Mexico. You don't own the land in Canada. You may have a 500-acre ranch in British Columbia. That's owned by the crown. You're renting it from the crown. Okay, most countries you cannot own land. Sweden, Germany, England, France, you don't really own the land, but here you do. So they got that problem. That's one of the big problems that the USA Incorporated is facing. The second one is we're armed to the teeth to defend our land. So now they got, a real conundrum. They've got to confiscate the land. They got to get rid of the Constitution. That's what's going on right now. That's what they're trying to do. They want to create enough Civil War tension that they have to come in and say, okay, we're suspending the Constitution, you guys, and we cannot ever get into a violent encounter with people we disagree with. We disagree with them on a verbal grammar rhetoric level, but we do not resort to violence ever. That's what they want. They're doing everything they can. Everything from Paul Pelosi's break-in at his house, which probably didn't happen, to the January 6th, which was BS. Nancy had a camera crew there on that day. Her daughter is a filmmaker. They had showed up with 6-person camera crew on that morning. The Capitol Police opened up the doors and let them in. A video of this. Fred Epps, who was instigating all of this, he's been left unchecked, untouched by the whole thing. Fred Epps has to be brought up on grand jury charges. We got to find out what he was doing, why he wasn't ever arrested. So listen, this is really important. On January 6th, those people went into another country. Those people that came from Ohio and New England and the South to protest, they entered into another country. So Trump has to be held culpable here because he has to know this. He's not an idiot. Those people should have met in Baltimore or outside the limits in Virginia somewhere for their protests. The minute that they entered into D.C., they were in another country. A country has different laws than us. So those people can be held in solitary confinement in that country because they don't have the rules and laws of the Constitution that we have. It's really important to understand. Wow. So that was a huge mistake. And I was telling everyone, don't go, And, I knew that they were heading off to another country where they got sucker punched.
So you think Trump actually knew, and this was also some sort of grand trap for people?
Yeah, I hate to say it. But I don't know. Maybe they have something on him or not. I know a lot of people just love Trump. But, it's time for him to go. I'm sorry. He's attacking DeSantis and Youngkin, who should be his allies right now. He acts like a 12-year-old boy. I think we're done with him. I don't want to deal with him anymore. He's cost me tons of money, cost me tons of friendships. And the whole time I was defending him while he was acting like a 12-year-old. He did a lot of good stuff. Thank you for what you did. You brought this to the forefront. You deserve all the recognition for that. You brought out a lot of stuff. You stopped a lot of stuff when you were president. But you know what? We need an adult now in the room. If it's Youngkin or DeSantis, I don't care at this point. We got to take control of the elections. We got completely snookered in this election. And this election was actually done, I believe, to cause morale loss. We were ahead in every poll, and everybody, Joe Rogan to Elon Musk, was telling you where they were going. There was this tide. You could feel it. You could feel it. There was a tide going.
Yeah.
And they aborted it. They aborted it completely. In Colorado, I mean, they got skunked. I mean, it's 14, 15 points, but the polls weren't saying that right before the election. They were saying it was deadlocked. But when the election comes, and you can see by the charts that the two are running pretty parallel, you know, red and blue. And then suddenly there's this blue surge in a minute that goes up. You look at every single chart for every single of every state. There's this blue surge that happens right at the right moment to take the thing. It happened in Pennsylvania, it happened in Colorado, and it's clearly mail-ins that are on the side. They're waiting to see how it's going, how many votes are going to have to put in, and they put them all in at the same time. It's all a spike. So that means it all happened at that one moment. So all of a sudden there's, 50,000 blue votes and no red votes, right? And it's happening everywhere. It's very suspicious. They threw it. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not an idiot. Don't treat me like an idiot. And so now we have to figure out what we're going to do about that.
Well, what steps do you think we would have to take to, if this is so corrupt and it's so entrenched in the system, and you said that you found so many anomalies that you can't even figure out what's going on? What do we do to solve this? And if we do, does it even matter if we, how can we know who we get in there isn't going to be eventually controlled anyway?
Yeah. So around 2013 or so, I was living in Boulder. I was working at Gaia, and I had a P.O. box where I would direct people to send me stuff because they didn't want to know where I lived. And one day in my P.O. box, I got a letter, anonymous letter with no return address. So I took it home and I opened it up, and it was a typed letter, 10 pages or so. And what had happened is that a federal judge in Boulder County had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And he had, I think, 3 months to live, something like that. He was an elderly guy, right? And so he decided to invite his 8 or 9 friends to a weekly, every Wednesday at the local Starbucks or some coffee house, I don't know where, and he would just let out everything. They couldn't take any notes. They couldn't record it. But they could go home and write down everything if they wanted. So apparently the person that wrote me this letter, and he sent about 20 or 30 of these letters out to various people like David Icke and a lot of people. And because I talked to them, they said, oh yeah, I got that letter. And so I'm not going to tell you everything that's in the letter because you won't be able to put on YouTube or anything.
Right.
But there was one part of it. First off, he said something that was really interesting. He said that the state patrol of every state in the union, when they pull you over, they know everything that you've got. They know where, if you have guns, they know where every gun is in your car. They know where every knife is. They know how much money you've got, and they know where all your drugs are. So when they walk up to your car and they say, hi, how you doing? You see your license? And you got anything in there, like a gun or anything, right? You better be honest because they know. So that was one thing. But the other thing that this person said that the judge told was that the judge said that when you're appointed to office or you're elected to office, they give you 3 years. They watch you really closely for 3 years. And I will tell you that Jesse Ventura, governor of Minnesota, accidental governor of Minnesota, told me that he was watched for 3 years, and that at the end of the 3 years, he said, screw it, I'm not doing this anymore. And he announced that he wasn't running because he could tell that he was being seriously watched. He was being followed and everything. And so they give you 3 years. At the end of the 3 years, the judge said, if you pass the muster, then you start receiving payments, mysterious payments every month. High payments. Congressman receiving something like $10,000 a month. The judge said he was receiving $40,000 beyond their salary. The judge was receiving $40,000 a month beyond his salary. His salary is already about $250,000, so 40 times 12, yeah, about $240,000. So So double the salary. And he said that's how they hook you. You cannot do anything outside the venue of what the parameters of what you're allowed to. So that's why nothing ever gets done. And he said he didn't know who was making these payments. Was coming out of some foreign account. And you start thinking about it, how many federal judges and state judges and congressmen and senators. We're talking about a lot of money.
That's a lot of fucking money.
So
man, now
that's how they control it. Anyway, that's what the letter said. That is the basis of how they control it.
Well, while we're talking about people being controlled and those that were once controlled, maybe now speaking out, what do you think about the whole Kanye fiasco and what he has been actually talking about?
Well, now, okay, so Kanye was part of them. He was always doing, the Illuminati stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so, so he knew what was really going on because he was an insider. And, now maybe he's rebelling. I think he actually is rebelling. I think it's actually a sincere rebellion because he's saying things that you can't say. Weidner's first universal law, I can't remember what it is, but it's whatever ideas are the most suppressed are most likely the closest to the truth. And so we see that he's speaking about ideas that are suppressed that you're not supposed to talk about. And he's being destroyed for it. And so is Irving, the basketball player. Right. He has to actually pay $500,000 and apologize. Who's he giving the $500,000 to anyway? A little obscure on that. So there's a mafia. There's a mafia that runs the country. And that mafia is made up of people that you can't mention, people that you can't talk about. And if you do, you will pay the price. And so everything is kind of coming into focus now.
Well, you look at what they just did again with David Icke. He's banned from the European Union. How many countries? What they did with Alex Jones, however many millions or billions he owes. They go after these high level people that are speaking against the narrative, and then it trickles down from there. I think this is kind of like a calm before the storm. They're going to come after big time censorship again and all that stuff on conspiracy thinking, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, they're going to shut me down. I'm next. I'm coming on next. They're going to shut me down. Facebook restricts my thing for doing nothing, for absolutely doing nothing. They give me this huge restrictions and everything. And I'm hopeful that Elon is going to do to Twitter what I think he's going to do, which is really fantastic, by the way, if he actually goes forward with it, because he's basically going to turn Twitter into PayPal, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all these things are going to be at once without censorship. And so you pay $8 a month or whatever, and you get all of these things, and that when you make a video, it's not going to be censored.
Right.
And that is actually a good model. That is a model that will work, and it will destroy Facebook, YouTube, PayPal. Thank God for that one. PayPal, you suck.
Yes.
PayPal and all the rest. Instagram, I hate. So so that might be the solution. He seems to know what's going on. If you read between the lines of his tweets and stuff, he seems to know that who's who and what's what. And I personally think that by coming out so forcefully against critics of your mafia, that means that's the end of your mafia. That means that you've pretty much been exposed. And that's what's going on right now is pretty much the war in Ukraine is really a war of Putin against this mafia, which is centered in Ukraine and always has been centered in Ukraine, and for like 1,000 years now. And they were called the people who steal your name. So you had to go through Ukraine. It wasn't called Ukraine then. It was called Khazaria. And you had to go through Khazaria to get to the east. So you're a merchant or a businessman. You would go into this country because you had to go to the other side to make a deal, right? So say you're going to go buy, you're going to go sell, you're going to buy 5,000 bales of hay, wheat, we'll say 5,000 bales of wheat. So you're going through this country and you got to get over to Hungary, right, where they're growing the wheat, and you're there, and so what happens is you stop at a hotel, motel, whatever they had then, and you go out to eat, and then one of them befriends you and asks if they can buy you a drink, and you say yes, and they slip a Mickey in the drink, and then you drink the drink, and then you wake up the next day out in the alley, all your clothes are gone, all of your stuff is gone, and they're off going to Hungary to complete your deal. See, the people who steal your name, that's what they were called. And so everybody would go around it. Eventually the Russians, the Poles, and the Hungarians got so tired of this crap that I think it was around 1100 or so, they attacked and destroyed the whole country and captured a lot of people and put them into camps and things. And then, you know, for a while it was okay, but then eventually these people, you know, eventually came back and started up their shenanigans again. So we have to, where we're going right now in the age of Aquarius is we're decentralizing. It's the Great Decentralization. The supply chain breakdown is part of this. People don't want young guys that are 25, 20, 30 years old. That, you know, they're looking, and then, you know, people are truck driving companies are waving contracts in front of their eyes. Hey, come work for me. I'll give you $150,000 a year. And the young guys are going, $150,000 a year. Let's see, I'm going to be in a truck in very dangerous situation for 14 to 16 hours a day. I'm not going to see my family. I'm not going to see my friends. I'm going to have no free time. I'm going to be working 6 days a week. I don't think so. And that's what's going on. And people just aren't doing it anymore. They don't want to do it. You can go here in Colorado, where I live. You can come here in late August, mid-August, and work until mid-October in the marijuana fields, trimming, making $40 an hour cash. Yeah, you're working 10, 12 hours a day, but at least you got a place to sleep at night and be with your friends and stuff. And you can make $50,000 in 2.5 months cash. Right. So why are you going to do that? I mean, it's like, because after taxes, that's like $80,000, right? So it's just, it's crashing. It's all crashing and burning. It's actually a good thing, even though we're going to go through hell. And so I think that the elections themselves are going to decentralize. In other words, okay, let's say let's say that USA Incorporated declares that they are the dictator, all right? And then they have to go out and send people house to house, right? To find out what they've got, look at how much food they got, ammunition, guns, the whole thing, because that's what they would do. How much gasoline is that going to cost? Especially with gas prices rising. Are they really going to be able to do that? I mean, the sheriff where I live is 50 miles away from me. So he's got to spend enough gas to go 100 miles to answer one call, right? Right. How much does that cost? At when gas goes up, now it's going to go back up because of the election is over. So it's going to go back up to $6, $7. Nobody's going to be able to afford to do anything. And diesel's even worse. Why are we have a diesel problem? It doesn't make any sense. And so it's a controlled demolition. They think that they're going to replace us with robots, but they're not. They think that we're going to be living in a world where we're going to own nothing and be happy, but that's not going to happen because somebody owns that stuff that we're renting. Who is that? Right? So their whole plan is you're going to live in an apartment. You're going to have, within 15 minutes of your apartment, you're going to have your hospital, your grocery store, 15 minutes walking, not driving. 15
Yeah.
walking. You're going to have the hospital, grocery store. This is their plan, right? Everything will be within, so you're stuck in this little area, 15 minutes around your house. You can't leave. If you leave, you'll get fined. You can leave for like 50 times a year. But if you do that more than that, you'll start getting fined. And are we really going to put up with that? And then how do you enforce it? And then see, the problem with politicians and central planners is they think that they have it all figured out. But what they haven't figured out and what drives them crazy is the people who outsmart them. And that's who we are. We're the ones who keep continuously outsmart them, and they can't stand it. It drives them psychologically out of their minds that there's people who find ways to get around their rules. And you know, I'm one of them. I'm a classic rule breaker. I will study the situation. I will look for the soft areas that I can penetrate, and then I will go in and I will penetrate it. And I know what they're, you know, and so they're never going to be able to catch people like me. We're too crafty. We outthink them. We see ahead of us, and so it's going to break down. It's going to break down into smaller communities where we're going to be growing our own food and tending to our own animals. And we're going to have to start teaching homeschooling. So whoever in your community really understands math, well, dude, you're going to have to spend 6 hours a week teaching kids how to do math. I'm sorry. And it's going to have to be voluntary. And same thing with all skill sets. You're going to have to volunteer to teach and pass down your skill sets to the younger generations, and you're going to have to do it for free. And it's going to be on every level. I would suggest, you know, people start buying books, how-to books, how to farm, how to grow food, not internet, recipe books, all sorts of things that you're going to need, because the final blow will be the shutdowning of the internet, where we're completely lost. And that will be what they will do at the very end, right before they're going to do their final takeover. So USA Incorporated is part of a larger global plan to create a one world order, and where everything is watched, where your calories are watched, what you buy is watched, how many gallons of gasoline you use is watched, your temperature and your thermostat is going to be watched, where you get your fuel is going to be watched. I'm presumed they're going to outlaw wood stoves eventually, because people can decentralize them. So the war is Piscean, which is the last 2,000 years, which we know that was. We know what that was all about because we all saw it. And it's all about centralization, mass armies, gigantic, huge programs. Those are all going to go away. That's all going to disappear. Mass, gigantic programs, huge armies. That's all going to disappear. They're not going to have a robot future. Robots break down. It's the law of entropy. It's ridiculous to think that a robot is not going to break down, that you're not going to have human intervention. The problem is the human intervention to fix the robot is going to take somebody with a master's degree in engineering. So we're going to have to be turning out millions of people who have master's degree in engineering in order to service the robot future. And we're not doing that. We're not putting out, most people don't even begin to understanding engineering. So we're not building the education, which tells me that future is BS. They aren't really planning for a robot future. They're just telling us that. And, you know, the central planners know that there's no way that a robot future without tons of human intervention can ever occur. Self-driving cars, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
It seems like the mind control, the mass mind control spells that everyone it was under for the longest time is starting to break off in pieces. And one of the biggest control mechanisms that kept people under there, Hollywood, the media, people aren't paying attention to it. It seems like Hollywood's failing. That spell's being broken on a mass. The spell of the medical industry, the spell of the pharmaceutical, everybody's seeing through the bullshit, and it's just that control is not working anymore.
No, I follow Hollywood. I watch a lot of first run movies, and I can tell you Hollywood is just whoa, there are some seriously bad movies out there.
They went woke and went broke.
It did. And even like Gaia went went woke, and now their stock is like $2.20 a share or something, because they got rid of the seeking truth, which was what everybody wanted. So they had genres. They had seeking truth, we had transformation, and we had yoga at Gaia, right? 80% of the viewers was seeking truth. Right. All the people I had on, David Icke, and all the people that I was bringing on. And so it was a left-wing newspaper wrote an article. I don't want to name the left-wing newspaper, but it's a national newspaper. They wrote an article about Gaia. And in the article, they had the temerity. This was about late 2018, maybe early 2019. They had the temerity in the article to say that Gaia is okay as long as they get rid of the seeking truth genre, right? In the article, they said this. I was like blown away. I was like, what? This article, this writer who we don't even know who he is suggesting that the only way Gaia can succeed is to get rid. And they did. They got rid of it within 6 months. Gaia got rid of the seeking truth, and their stock just it went up during COVID. I'll give you that. But all the streaming networks went up during COVID. But what COVID did was it gave us at home a chance to review other streaming networks. And that's why when COVID disappeared, Netflix stock went down, Prime stock went down, Gaia stock went down, all of the stock went down because we got to compare. So everybody, Hulu's cool. Hulu's better than Netflix. At least they allow cool programming, right? So that you could see that certain people that were hip enough to know what was happening, they're not going up, but they're at least floating, and not going down. So get woke, go broke is absolutely right. What happened to Hollywood, I now believe, is that when the Me Too movement happened, like 2016, I guess, when the Me Too movement happened, Harvey Weinstein went down and all that. Hollywood decided to empower women. And so what they did was they just made women into men. And so, but what they didn't do and what they didn't think about, because they this mad rush to appease women because of the Me Too. And believe me, Hollywood was the #1 abuser of women in the world. Trust me on that one. I lived in Hollywood. I saw what they did to young women in that town. It was outrageous, turning them into cocaine addicts. And oh man. So all these women pour into Hollywood every year from all over the United States and the world in hopes of becoming movie stars. And then they end up being porn stars, hookers, working for the man, and being totally abused, passed around. It was outrageous. And, I knew some of them, these women. And so what Hollywood did was they said, okay, we'll let women into positions of power, which is a good thing, and we'll try to appease the women. So what they did was they created all these female archetypes. But what they failed to do, which I can't believe, is they made them perfect. All the females were perfect from the beginning. They knew how to kick a man's ass in. They were smarter than all the men. They didn't have to go through any kind of ordeal to get to where they were. Rings of Power on Amazon is a perfect example. It would have been much more interesting to find out how Gladriel got to be where she is. What kind of trials and tribulations did she have to go through to become the badass that she is right now? But no, She's just a badass from the beginning. The snow ghoul at the first episode comes and kills everybody, but not Gladriel. You know,
Well, it seems like they're not only doing that, but they're making men seem useless and stupid for their roles in movies.
Yeah, and the people that should be actually getting Academy Awards in Hollywood right now are the stuntmen for making it look like they're actually being beaten up by a 90-pound girl, right? I mean, that's some really serious stunt work, I got to tell you. And they're the ones that are doing the acting. Nobody else is doing the acting. So Hollywood went too far, and on every level, they went too far with and what they did and they're doing it in advertising too, where all the women in the ads are doing men's stuff. Now, what men used to do, they're rock climbing, they're doing all sorts of rugged outdoor stuff, right? And you never see a woman, with a baby or nurturing a family in movies or in ads anymore. That's over. The only movie I can think of where the woman was actually a woman and she was empowered was what's it called? It's a horror movie about these creatures that you make a noise. A Quiet Place? Yeah.
Yeah.
A Quiet Place 2, the sequel. Emily Blunt. She's fighting the aliens and doing a good job of it, but she's doing it to protect her 2 kids. Right. So it's a very woman thing. And that's why that movie succeeded while these other movies are failing. Because, you're rooting for, you're willing to sacrifice your life to save your children. This is awesome. Whereas you go to these superhero movies, I forget the name, the one that's the girlfriend of the Joker. They made a movie with her. I can't remember.
Harley Quinn. Yeah.
Harley
Suicide
Quinn,
Squad or something.
Yeah. So she's walking by a oil refinery and she casually just throws a bomb into the oil refinery, causing it to blow up. Well, she just killed probably 200 or 300 workers there, but they act like she's some kind of hero, that she's cool for doing it, right? And you're like, and you don't like her. And you don't like any of them. I mean, Wonder Woman you sort of liked in the first movie, but the second movie you stopped liking her. And you certainly didn't like Galadriel in Rings of Power. I stopped watching after 2 episodes. She was so insufferable. And, so I'm watching all these first-run movies, and I can't get through the first act because it's so unbelievable.
Well, do you think this has anything to do with the transhuman agenda? There's an inversion of masculinity and femininity that's very obvious, of course, in Hollywood, but also in reality that seems to be going on. That especially look at women's sports. I mean, I feel horrible for female athletes these days that are being infiltrated by these men that just couldn't do well in men's sports. So they infiltrate women's sports to feel like they are a winner or something. So we have that aspect going on as well. Do you think this all ties in together into this transhuman movement?
Yeah, and I want to ask those guys, if any of you are actually watching this show and you're one of these guys that's competing in female sports, really, dude? Really? How can you look yourself in the mirror, you piece of... I mean, really, you have no honor. You have nothing. You're just a fake. You're just a fraud. And I actually hope you lose. I hope you lose at everything for the rest of your life. You're a loser. You're all a bunch of losers. All right. It's like me being in a boxing ring with a 12-year-old.
Right.
Only a loser would go do something like that. So you're just a bunch of losers. And by the way, the first lawsuits from these people who are transitioned, they're just starting right now. And they are going to be vicious. And it's all going to end in gigantic lawsuits. And all these doctors and these teachers and these counselors, they're coming for you. They're coming for you. There's a time lag, all right, from the time the person actually transitions to the time of regret. Okay. I have a lot of trans friends. Okay. At least half of them regret it. Okay. The other half of them are cool. And that's fine. If you want to change your sex, that's fine. But if you do that when you're
well, they're bringing children into it. That's the
when you're
problem.
bringing with children, then that's where the regret comes in, when they do it too early. Again, I have nothing against somebody transitioning. It's fine. If you think you're a girl or you think you're a guy and you want to change and you want to be on hormones for the rest of your life. And see, I believe that anytime that you cut your body, you're cutting into your etheric spirit. So every time you have an operation or whatever, you're also slicing in to the fabric of your ethereal body, and same with tattoos. Every time you get a tattoo, you're tattooing your ethereal body too. So so the Maori were a tattoo cult in New Zealand, but they would tattoo the actual etheric body on so their tattoos were made out of minerals that would emulate the etheric body. Right. So it was a sacred thing that they were doing with tattoos. So you can do tattoos that enhance your etheric body, but putting a skull and crossbones on your shoulder or whatever, the devil's face,
or mom on your neck.
Yeah. Or wow, I don't know who would do it on their neck. That must be really sore. Yeah. And also the toxins that come with tattooing, which is just leaching into your system for the rest of your life. So, again, I'm not against tattoos. If you want to tattoo yourself, I don't care. But you got to think of the larger ramifications. So, yeah, we're moving into a place, and it's going to take decades of this decentralization. But they're not going to be able to afford electric cars. Aren't going to happen. I have an electric vehicle. It's not going to happen. There's not enough electricity on Earth to power them, and there's not enough lithium on Earth to make it.
Yeah.
So, it's just there's nothing. This is environmentalists hate this, and I'm an environmentalist, but the cleanest burning fuel on Earth is probably nuclear, but then second, it's gasoline, because you don't have to transport it. I mean, you have to transport it, but it doesn't. Okay, if you run out of electricity in the middle of the desert in your electric vehicle, are you going to go to the electric station and get a bucket of electricity? Exactly. Right. How are you going to power that thing back up? Somebody's going to have to drive an electric vehicle all the way out there and have a big, huge diesel generator on there, and they'll charge you up. I can't think of any other way that you're going to do it. Imagine if everybody in New York City had electric vehicles. How would they charge them? Would there be like thousands of electrical cords coming out of their apartment windows, going down 15 floors to the electric vehicle that's parked out there? Is that how you're going to do it? I mean, have we thought this through? No, we haven't. And that tells me that it is not supposed to happen. It's just cabal fantasies that they use, because the only way the electric future would work is if we lower the population to 500 million. Then you would have enough electricity. Then you might be able to set up an infrastructure. But 8 billion people, no way. There's no way. So I guess that kind of tells you where they're headed with all this. And we do have sudden adult death syndrome.
Yeah. Yes.
Going around everywhere. Sports stars falling over, singers falling over on stage, comedians falling over. What's causing this?
Right. Well, I mean, this is something that we never, growing up as a kid, I never had to worry about my classmates dropping dead of heart attacks or healthy athletes and things like that. And we all know what's happened in the past couple of years, where people were duped into getting experimentation done on them by our own government. And now, this is what happens. A bunch of people die.
Yeah, it's very odd. And the fact that it's not being talked about. Insurance companies, the actuaries and insurance companies are worried that the insurance companies are going to run out of money. They can't pay the life insurance anymore. And so they're going to start calling force majeure, which is that it's an act of God and they can't pay it off anymore. And we're sorry. Yeah, you have $300,000 coming to you for your dead dad, but we haven't got the money. And that's what's going to start happening here. And the media is completely ignoring it, which that will tell you more about what's really going on than anything else. Why this isn't the number one story on all the news outlets. I mean, I had a relative die. She was 40 years old, a daughter of a sister-in-law, and she had a heart attack. It's out of the blue. Big tennis player and all that.
Hopefully more coroners and people performing autopsies will come out and start talking about what they're finding in people's bodies post-mortem, these strange kind of coily type of things that are trapped in people's veins and all this nasty stuff that they're pulling out of people. I'm hoping that more and more of this will come and start coming to light so we can have more information to go off of. And maybe, I don't know, do you think there would ever be any accountability for any of this, and who would we hold accountable?
No, there won't be. And it's the same people that are doing it that are doing all the other stuff. They own Hollywood. The same people. Just look at them. You know, all you have to do is just start looking at the people that are making all these decisions, and you'll see there's a great commonality among them. A lot of them are appear to be not part of the cabal, but they are. And getting back to Trump, all right, I had a friend who was very wealthy, and he made a fortune in real estate in Manhattan. And I was talking to him one time, and I said, this is long before Trump, 20 years ago. I said, so, is it hard, to build a place in Manhattan? And he said, you wouldn't believe what I have to go through. He said, I have to go through the mob. The mob runs the unions. The mob runs the construction companies. The mob runs the real estate market. He said, I have to go through the mob with my hat in hand, on my knees, begging them, paying off tons of people to get all these permits passed, right? He said, only the bravest people can do real estate in Manhattan. Now, when Trump got out of business school, he told his dad, who was a real estate developer, but not in Manhattan, but in Long Island and the Bronx and Brooklyn. And he said, I'm going to go. He was pointed across the river. And he said, I'm going over there and I'm going to become successful doing real estate over there. And his dad looked at him and said, do not go over there and do that. You do not want to rub shoulders with those people. They are the worst people on earth. And he went, and and a lot of his friends were really the worst people on earth. I'm sorry, but they were. And and so it had to rub off on him, right? And again, I thank Trump for what he did, and what he did was great, and really bore a hole through the wall so that we could actually see what was going on. But I'm a startup guy. I get hired by people who are doing startups. Even right now, I'm talking to a guy who wants to hire me to do a startup, right? And I'm really good at startups. I get in there, I do 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I organize the whole thing. I get the whole thing going, just like I did with Gaia, and I can get it going. But I'm not good at management. I'm just not. I'm good at just getting in there and ripping stuff apart and putting it back together. And that's what Trump is. Trump's a good guy with startup, but he's not a manager. Right now, we need a manager. We need someone who's got manager experience to come in. Biden clearly doesn't have manager experience. So we need somebody who comes in and is a manager. And what they're doing is they're managing the USA Incorporated. And what they're going to do is we have to cut it. We have to cut it. We have to cut the welfare. We have to cut, the Social Security. We have to cut the military. We have to cut the bureaucracies down to about 10, 15% of where they are right now. And and it's going to be brutal. But, Facebook just laid off 11,000 people. Twitter just laid off up 20,000 people. There's massive layoffs because these bloated organizations have to decentralize. And the hardest thing to decentralize is USA Incorporated. But we have to do it. And it's going to be a long, arduous struggle because those are the people in power. And they've superseded their authority. They don't have the power that they're claiming. And fortunately, the Supreme Court is now peopled with enough people to stop it. Apparently, they are intent on stopping the overreach of the federal government. And that's a good thing. So there are places of optimism to look. And so the Supreme Court is on our side, at least nominally, on that subject, not on the rest.
Right. Well, we're definitely headed in some very interesting times. I'm looking forward to see what happens with the coincidement of everybody waking up and just the lack of participation in the bullshit upcoming. I think we're headed into a better era. Like you said, we'll probably have some hiccups and things along the way. But before we close out, I want to get to something that we were discussing before the show. And you mentioned how they legalized magic mushrooms here in Colorado. And we were discussing a little bit about something being done at the Imperial College, some DMT experimentation. And I am a proponent of plant medicines. I do enjoy psychedelics. Psychedelics have helped me a lot. But when they get into the hands of the pharmaceutical companies and corporations and things like that that are looking to either use it for the medical industry or weaponize it in some way, that makes me nervous. And some of the things that are happening with the mainstream movement of psilocybin and psychedelics kind of makes me wonder and question what's going on with that. And I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, they can't, DMT is a synthetic. And so that's a completely different animal, but they can't do anything about organic psychedelics. I mean, and there's nothing more paradigm shattering than a heroic dose of mushrooms,
right?
Which I don't recommend. But if you're game, 5 grams of dried mushrooms on an empty stomach, can eat any food for 24 hours, go into a completely black room, and wait out the 4 hours. You got to have a guy outside, your keep cool guy. What he does is he opens up the door when you're screaming and goes, "Keep cool, guy," and then closes the door again. All right, so you need that guy. And I highly recommend it. But in Imperial College, they're giving DMT intravenously to people because DMT is such a short experience, like 7 to 8 minutes, and then it's over. And but when you do it intravenously, you're getting that peak high for hours. And so what they're doing is these people are mapping the DMT realms. And what's interesting about that is they're all meeting the same entity. So there's like 50 people doing this. And then they have sessions afterwards, and they all are meeting the same entities, as if we're surrounded by this invisible realm that psychedelics allow you to peer into for a moment. And there are beings all around us, plasma beings. That's why psychedelics look like organic light. What you're looking at the plasma that is all around us. And these beings are in the plasma sphere, in the plasma ocean. And psychedelics allow you, but you can do other things too, that allow you to peer into that other universe. And, instead of, I don't believe that we're going off planet. I think space is too dangerous. I've done a deep dive into it through my Stanley Kubrick research, and I don't believe unless you hollow out an asteroid or something, radiation will just kill you. But we can go into inner space, which is what psychedelics allow you to do. Right. And I highly encourage people to explore consciousness in a stable, right way. And in other words, not at a rave or a rock concert. It's fine if you want to do that. I don't care. But if you really want to explore consciousness, you really need to do it in a quiet, dark place.
Yeah, I'd agree. Well, that makes me think about how, you're saying that we not necessarily are going to find life out in space, but searching through inner space. I've had a few guests on that live near high strangeness areas, like we'll say Skinwalker Ranch, and their property is is being kind of poached, and aerospace companies are interested in going onto their property and doing research underground and finding magnetic anomalies. And these aerospace companies, they're not looking outer space for aliens and other beings. They're looking here. And I think what you said, it makes a lot of sense that we're completely surrounded all the time by this realm that we can't perceive during, the normal spectrum of our vision, but psychedelics and possibly, I think there are very high level interests that are tinkering with this stuff to maybe have a better understanding or communicate with these entities like you were talking about.
Yeah, they're definitely interested in it. And, you know, I think my friend Terrence McKenna was probably taken in by these forces near the end there, because they realized that what he was doing was so revolutionary that they had to kind of control it a little bit. And, he kind of admitted that had been taken in, told me a couple of times that, forces outside of him were in control of him to a large degree. And, that's what they're going to do. Once you stand out, they're going to come and get you one way or another. So, but, he did, thank goodness, Terrence released this information and made it ubiquitous and allowed all of us to explore these things in a real way, in an adult way. And I think that is probably the biggest causation of the awakening. I really do. I really do. I think psychedelics were it opened up the mind's eye. I mean, it did. It did with me. I mean, it made me realize that I'm really just a small part of a larger universe. And that when I saw that universe for the first time, I was in complete and utter awe. Right now, I'm doing work, before we close, I'm doing a lot of work on psychedelics in the past, finding that like different alchemical books are actually books about psychedelics from 800, 900, 1500 years ago. So psychedelics weren't discovered in the 1950s. They've been around a long time.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty convinced that our ancient ancestors passed on all this wonderful, profound knowledge, and they've probably received it from exploring these different realms from plant medicines and psychedelics. And they probably had a much better understanding of how to navigate these realms than we ever would.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is if you do a heroic dose of shrooms, there can be no doubt one thing you will definitely see, usually at the very beginning, because I value hallucinations. I'm sorry, but that's what I don't want. I want to see stuff. I want to be immersed in it. And the first thing that you really see is geometry. And you see all the 7 platonic solids. You see interconnected geometries, the flower of life. And it's as if the mushroom, the first thing it wants you to understand is geometry. So it takes you through a first part of the trip is always this geometric thing going on. And then slowly you immerse yourself into the larger world, the landscapes, like more artwork than in all the museums on Earth combined. You'll see in, 15 seconds, right?
Yeah.
All sorts of surreal places and planets and oceans and all with that strange light coming out of them. And that's the plasma light that surrounds us. So that world is now accessible to all of us. And that is a miracle.
Yes. Are you encouraged where we're headed with psychedelic research?
I am, and I'm glad Colorado is one more time at the forefront of allowing the liberation of these things. And I mean, DMT is legal in Colorado now. I mean, you got to go to a doctor to get it, but that's huge. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's like, what? Right. And of course, it spreads out. So I think Colorado is actually the new California. Is always whatever happens in California happens in the rest of the country later. And I think Colorado surpassed California. I think we're now the new harbingers of change.
Yeah. That's because California, no one wants to be in there anymore anyway.
No, and
But
Coloradoans are very libertarian. Even the
mm,
liberals are libertarian, like Polis. He's still a
right.
libertarian, even though he's a liberal. He's a liberal libertarian, which is a weird thing to be. But yeah, so and hopefully libertarian ideas will begin spreading out across the United States.
Yeah, we're definitely living in fascinating times. Jay, thank you so much for coming on. Before you head out, let everyone know where they can find your reality check and anything else you got going on.
Yeah, my show on YouTube, Reality Check. Just go to YouTube, type in Jay Weidner Reality Check, jayweidner.com with all my free articles and all my musings, and sacredmysteries.com and Gaia.com have all of my documentaries and movies.
Wonderful. We will do this again in the future for sure. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See you then. All right. Excellent. Thank you so much.